What's the stupidest thing a teacher ever did at school? In 8th grade, a girl was known for her long hair and which apparently was never cut in her life. Well, my math teacher at the time took some scissors and snipped some of it off for fun and didn't think it was a big deal. Yeah, she got fired. This happened to me in the 3rd grade. My headband broke and I was pushing my hair from my face. She jumps up with scissors and cuts my hair. Parents went to the school. I was pulled from her class. Week later she does it to another student. Her father went ballistic on her and the principal. Teacher was fired. This was 1980s in Colorado. Still makes me cry when I think about it. I had a teacher cut their finger off with a paper guillotine while demonstrating how to safely use it. In their defense, it worked wonders as everyone was so traumatized by what could happen that no one messed around with the guillotines ever. I was sitting here thinking about how a guillotine made of paper could do anything to someone's hand. I really am an idiot. When I was in 3rd grade, my teacher wrote 1-2 equals on the chalkboard. I said -1. She told me the correct answer is that it doesn't work out. I am still mad about this 16 years later. 1st grade teacher, no number can be less than 0. Classmate, but what about the numbers on the thermometer? Teacher, those numbers are different. When my friend, kindergarten student, really needed to go to the toilet and they said no. A few minutes later he asked again saying he really needed to go. Number. Then a few minutes later he just wet himself and got scolded. I've always told my kids to go if you have to, even if the teacher tells you no. Threw a textbook at a kid who made a joke about her mother. Killed her career. At least it wasn't the kid. Had an affair with a 17-year-old pupil, then left her job, husband and 3 children to go and live with him in a different city. I had a teacher who made us do this assignment where we would come up with an opinion on anything, and then he would argue the opposite viewpoint. After the first 3 people it became apparent he just wanted to stroke his own ego, a man in his early 60s arguing yelling with 13-year-olds. He was really putting people down too. One of my friends was 20th of 30 to be called on. She said, "I don't think the Holocaust should have happened." He lost his freaking mind. He sent her to the office, and the assignment was over for the day. Read a chapter from the book in silence. She was a legend. Class trip. My GR8 teacher is known as a weird person. During a camp trip with the class, we were separated into boys and girls for obvious reasons, with our own bathrooms and shower area. During one night, while the girls were showering, my teacher, who was a 50-plus-year-old man, decided it would be a funny joke to take pictures of the girls underneath the shower doors. Tried to say he wanted them for the yearbook, and to see their surprised reactions of these candid pictures. Needless to say, big problem, but no matter how many times he'd been reported, nothing ever happened. Too many stories about this teacher that should have had legal action. From rubbing the inner thigh of a student in his car, to being balls out in a kilt and propping his leg up on a desk like Captain Morgan. What the frick? My 8th grade science teacher started to beat the crap out of one of the students. It is okay to do that in India, at least back then. This kid was big. At some point during the beating he started to hit back and pretty soon it turned into a full-fledged kickboxing. The kid beat the crap out of teacher. I can't even imagine a teacher hitting my child, let alone what I'd say if my child beat up the teacher for hitting him. My brother's science teacher put a decently sized piece of sodium in a beaker of water and was shocked when it exploded and shattered the beaker. My teacher did something similar, except he used reasonable sized pieces first, and we kept mocking him for being a wuss. So he put a big bit in to crap us up, and it flew out and hit one of the students. Luckily, he wasn't burned too badly and we decided not to mention it because the teacher was a great laugh and it would have been a shame if he got in trouble. We had a teacher that was always chewing gum. Whenever his gum fell in the blackboard shelf, he would take that chalk-coated thing and put it right on his mouth again. Plot twist, the chalk on the shelf wasn't chalk. I was 7 years old and was taking a basic spelling quiz in class. My teacher counted every word wrong, even though they were all correct, because I put a period after every word. Obviously there's no need for a period, but 7 Wyoming was thinking, well, I was taught to always put a period after the last word of a sentence. Young me was just confused more than anything. My mom actually called in to complain, which never happened. She typically didn't get involved when I got involved in conflict at school. That's when it clicked how stupid it was for the teacher to do that. Instead of the teacher approaching me and saying, "You see, kid offrunner, periods aren't necessary here. Don't do that anymore," she just confused the crap out of me. Question on a test in elementary school: what is a shadow? My answer: an area with less light. Teacher's correction: wrong. An area with no light. One of my high school English teachers separated the class into two groups, good kids and bad kids. She would only teach the good kids and let the bad kids do whatever they wanted because she couldn't control them. I'll give a little bit of backstory. My younger brother has some learning disabilities and it led him to having trouble learning to tie shoes. He didn't learn until roughly 1st or 2nd grade. Well, he had this 60-70-year-old kindergarten teacher, and in the first week she called my mom in to discuss my brother. She went off about how he's a terrible student and this and that. She hadn't bothered to read his file as he had been in speech therapy and the like from 2 years old, and it really upset my mom. The worst part of it is at the end of this she had the audacity to give my mom his gym shoes, which were velcro, and say he will need new gym shoes as we don't allow retard shoes in this class. Needless to say, her teaching career didn't last too much longer after that. I had teachers that weren't that bad but said some pretty awful crap about my brother, who is on the spectrum. One of my teachers asked me to deliver a note to one of the gym teachers. When I got to the teacher's office, I knocked on the door so I could be let in. The teacher lost it. "Do you not know how to knock correctly?" That was very rude. To show me the correct way to knock, she sends out her aide who goes outside, closes the door and knocks the exact same way I did. The teacher then says, "See the difference? How much nicer that was." Me. Number. Sounds the exact same as I knocked. "Here's your note. Bye." Lady was a psycho. My old English teacher ripped out a blood sugar monitor thinking it was an iPhone. Kid in my class had diabetes. As he was walking towards the student, everyone was shouting that it wasn't an iPhone. He didn't listen and ripped it out. The kid had to go to the school nurse and the teacher lost his job because of it. My kindergarten teacher did not like my self-portrait I was drawing, so she grabbed my hand and did it for me. My picture did not turn out well. "How dare you not make a self-portrait that looks like Leonardo da Vinci made it." 10th grade. A girl who hung out with some people in my squad needed to pee. Instructor wouldn't let her leave. Girl asked again, and again, and again. Instructor got peed off and told her he'd give her a week detention if she asked again or left for the bathroom. She did the pee dance in her chair. He pretended not to notice. Suddenly she runs out with her face covered, crying audibly. He's yelling at her until a student tells him to stop. She ended up peeing herself. It was all over her seat and the floor, all because the instructor wanted to assert his dominance. Not sure what happened to the instructor. My chem teacher insisted electricity wasn't invented in the American Civil War. The conversation went like this: "Teach, there was no electricity in the Civil War." Class, "But they had the telegraph, right?" Teach, "Yes." Class, "And the telegraph uses electricity, right?" Teach, "Yep." Class, "So they had electricity." Teach, "There was no electricity in the Civil War." Was your teacher Patrick Star? Our chemistry teacher was apparently distracted and, using tongs, placed a hot test tube from the Bunsen burner into a student's bare hand. On the coach trip back from a field trip, some of the class were playfully winding the teacher up and he just lost it. He grabbed one of them by the throat and started strangling him. He only stopped when another teacher saw what was going on and calmly but assertively intervened. The teacher realized his mistake immediately and sat himself with the lad's mates and joked with them for the remainder of the journey in the hope that they wouldn't report him. It worked too. I can't believe the other teacher didn't report him. I was helping out at a primary school, 6-7-year-olds in this class, and the teacher was teaching basic maths. The topic was rounding numbers and she insisted that the children should round down from 6 to the nearest 10. From 5 and up you're meant to round up. I was a 13-year-old volunteer and felt unable to publicly correct her, though I really wanted to. One of my female teachers said to our primary 7 class, "Okay, a lot of you have been coming up to me and asking for help. I am your teacher. It's not my job to help you when you're stuck. Yes, Really? She tried to tell us a trick to spell athlete was A-T. Everybody just wrote it down. I kept looking at it. That's not right, is it? I looked it up in a dictionary that I could reach and raised my hand. She got embarrassed and gave me a hard time after that, like I was showing her up. What did I do? You're the one who was telling us the wrong thing. Kick a student. This was our chemistry teacher that a lot of students hated, mainly due to her grading and teaching style. She gave the AP, Advanced Placement, exam to students in her class who were completely lost. One day while talking to a few high school friends, I heard that they fired her because she kicked a student. I completely understood that a student didn't take her crap and she decided it was a good idea to kick him. Had a history teacher in high school who was cream of the crop, well versed about subjects and made history very fun, extremely popular with students. With the majority of the school's teachers approaching retirement, this guy had the chance to become, at age 35, a top-ranked school's flagship teacher. Came out after I graduated that there were reports of inappropriate relations with a couple underage students, reports meaning these students confessed to our guidance counselor that they had been in those relationships with him. He and the school underwent a conscious uncoupling, and he's still unemployed right now, despite these issues not being made public. Really stupid thing to do. Twice the pride, double the fall. Our math teacher basketball coach watched that movie Coach Carter a few too many times and started trying to be that guy from the movie. The first thing he did to try and make us have self-respect was forcing every guy in the classroom to tuck in their shirt. When someone pointed out he wasn't tucking in his shirt, he said the rules don't apply to him. Someone else suggested it's because he's not a guy. He lost his mind because he knew the only way out was to tuck his shirt in or be ridiculed by 14-year-olds for the rest of the year. He took the high road and got insulted every now and then. Also, he stopped forcing people to tuck in their shirts after that. We had an older teacher who was a few screws short of a dozen. A pigeon flew into his classroom one day. He decided to chase it out. He didn't just swat at it or guide it with a broom or something. No, his bright idea was to imitate it and try to coax it into the hall. So he starts flapping his arms and cooing. He eventually gets it to the hall and then realizes, oh, I can't just leave a bird here, so he proceeds to chase it down the hall towards the stairwell to the roof access, while still attempting to take off and signal his flock. The fact that this was his first response to having an avian guest audit his history class leads me to think it wasn't the first time this happened. It was a tough teaching season for Birdperson. One of our math teachers got a student pregnant. Sounds like a multiplication lesson. Once, while in Spanish class, our Spanish teacher got mad at us for not knowing something that she was about to teach us. Yes, you did read that right. A teacher got mad about something we didn't know, and the best part was that she acknowledged that this was a new subject. Then she asked if we knew anything about the subject, and then went on a 5-minute rant about why we should know this. I love school. I wish I was joking about this. This happened in a preschool classroom in like 94ish. Some context beforehand. I had just had some dental work the day or so prior because I fasciplated on the sidewalk. So I'm in classroom with 30 or so kids eating our usual lunch. That day cut up hot dogs and mac and cheese were on the menu. I think I ate a bite or two and realized, ouch, this isn't working. I remember this vividly. I walk to the trash can, throw my paper plate full of food first onto a pile of other kids' food. Well, the teacher or assistant didn't like that I wasted food and didn't eat, so they scooped it all back up on the plate and pretty much forced me to eat it. I did. They didn't physically force me, because I didn't want to get in trouble. Crying the whole time and yet told my mom after school. She stormed in the office and raised heck considering she had discussed this prior. Still pees me off. A coach subbing for a teacher who was out pulled a VCR tape from the cabinet labeled Rocky 3, I think, for us to watch so he didn't have to teach us. He was having problems getting the VCR on the TV cart to work and around back asking the class to see if it was working, and we were like no. Then he heard the video started to play. It was a porno called The Tower of Power. Not ever looking at the screen, he just sat down at his desk to relax. He couldn't see the screen from the where his desk was, but he heard the woman say frick me. He quickly shut off the tape. He took it immediately to the principal and the tape was destroyed, or so they said, and the teacher was fired on his day off. Now this happened in 1992 or 1993, and you can imagine the Tower of Power adult film from 1985. Holy moly, that must have been shocking for the sub and confusing AF for the kids. Teacher of AV left a tape of himself in the VCR of his pet project, which was apparently him laying on a bed in his underwear screaming at an aquarium. I'm a pretty short person due to a problem with my spine, so during high school I was a lot shorter than most people in my class. Our school had this rule that you had to stand up when the teacher came in and do the whole good morning miss whoever routine before being allowed to sit down. On one particular day we had a substitute teacher who immediately called me out for not standing up, and when I told her I was, she snapped at me for not respecting her. Now the rest of the class were well aware that I was just short, so they tried to tell her I was on my feet, but she just wasn't having it. She just continued yelling at all of us and threatening detentions if we didn't start showing respect. It went on until she lost it and came stomping around the table to prove I was still sitting. To find that I was actually on my feet, she kind of just cleared her throat, went quiet and avoided eye contact with me for the rest of the class. Even to this day her insistence that she was right and everyone else was wrong completely baffles me. In college, one of my education professors would tell a story about a teacher who, on his very first day of teaching no less, freaked out because the police wanted to do a random canine drug search in his classroom. He was going off about how his students were good kids and how they would never have drugs. At one point he dragged the cop aside and told him that he knew for a fact that one of the kids had drugs and he was trying to help the kid, but if the cop found the drugs it would destroy the kid's future. The cop ignored him and searched the room anyway. They found drugs in the teacher's bag. None of the kids had drugs. The teacher is now unemployed. That cop knew the score. We had a teacher in 4th grade who threw a shoe at a sleeping kid. This wasn't back in the day when that was okay either, and the lady who threw it was like mid-30s. Oh, we had a smart board at one point, those kind that need special markers. We had a sub one day who let us know she knew we were all troublemakers and that she wouldn't listen to a dang thing we would say. At one point, she picks up an expo marker, which our normal teacher had set across the room from the smart board to keep them clearly separate. We try to tell her not to use it, but she literally screams at us until we are quiet. Then she draws all over the board and tried to erase it. The entire class got detention for misleading the sub. It held up for all of one class as we texted our parents about it. By the end of that class, 3 people, myself included, hadn't been checked out of school. All of our parents' legal guardians were raising heck in the office. Eventually, detention was lifted and we all got apologies from the staff. The sub had to give a speech to us, apologizing to our faces. Admittedly, we probably all were a bit smug, but she lost it, started yelling racial slurs at us, called a few of us drug addicts and then finally, I'm not kidding, climbed out of a window and left. Never saw her again. Worked in tech services, IT. Kindergarten teacher took the kids to the library and put them all on computers. Talked to the kids about birds, specifically the blue-footed booby, then told the kids to search Google for pictures of boobies. Called us in tears because she was sure she was going to get fired. I know some people can be oblivious, but you can't not tell me that the idea of you sitting down a class of kindergartners and tell them to look up something boobies on the computer didn't ever raise a red flag. You have been visited by the Holy Fruit Boy. If you comment Tiny Turtle, he will bless you with unlimited holy fruits. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.